On a bone-chilling December afternoon in downtown Seattle, over 300 people gathered in complete, unprecedented silence. It wasn't a flash mob. It wasn't a protest. It was something no one expected to witness. One of the world's most celebrated musicians sitting on the frozen concrete sidewalk beside a 16-year-old girl that society had chosen to make invisible. What unfolded in those 52 minutes didn't just change two lives. It awakened an entire city and sparked a movement that would spread across 3 states. And it all began when André Rieu'S did something that thousands of people before him had refused to do. He stopped walking. The bone-piercing December wind whipped through the streets of Pike Place Market in Seattle, Washington. The last rays of afternoon sunlight struggled through heavy gray clouds as the city prepared for what meteorologists were calling the coldest night of the winter. Shop owners pulled their display boards inside early, and the usual crowd of tourists had thinned to just a few determined visitors bundled in heavy coats. Almost no one noticed the small figure huddled against the brick wall outside Meridian Coffee, wrapped in a threadbare sleeping bag that looked like it had seen better decades. Next to her, a gaunt German shepherd mix trembled despite his thick coat, his ribs visible through patchy fur. They had been sitting there for over 4 hours. No one had stopped. No one had even made eye contact. The girl was Skylar, 16 years old, though she looked both younger and older depending on the light. Her face carried the premature wisdom that comes from surviving on streets that show no mercy to children. The dog was Bear, and despite his imposing name, he was as gentle as they come, with eyes that held the same weary acceptance as his owner. When Marcus, the coffee shop owner, emerged from his store and aggressively shooed them away, Skylar simply pulled Bear closer and lowered her head. "Move along, kid, you're bad for business," he snapped, avoiding her gaze as customers watched through the window. Across the bustling street, someone paused. Wearing a dark fedora and navy wool coat, with the measured pace of someone who had learned to observe before acting, André Rieu'S stood watching. No security detail, no cameras, no entourage. For a moment, in the crowd of holiday shoppers and office workers heading home, nobody recognized who he was, but he saw everything, and within seconds, while everyone else averted their eyes and quickened their pace, he crossed the street. What happened next wasn't about fame, charity, or spectacle. It was about something almost no one on that street that day expected to witness: genuine human connection in a world that had forgotten how to see. There, across from a girl without a home and a dog without a voice, André Rieu'S was about to experience the most profoundly human moment of his life. And what he would discover about her past would change everything, not just for them, but for everyone watching. Hours before everything unfolded, André Rieu'S had quietly left Seattle Children's Hospital. He had been visiting Phoenix, an old orchestra friend who was recovering from emergency surgery. He didn't bring his team, didn't tell anyone where he was going. He preferred to walk to the parking garage alone, but along the way he changed his mind. He decided to take a detour through downtown, without purpose or destination. "It's good to remember the city as it really is," he thought to himself. On Pine Street, shops were beginning their early holiday closures. It was a frigid Thursday afternoon in mid-December, just days before Christmas. Clothing boutiques were bringing their sidewalk displays inside. A flower vendor was packing up for the day, and a corner deli was preparing for the dinner rush. Nothing seemed unusual, but one detail caught his attention: a small figure sitting on the ground, leaning against the weathered brick wall. She wasn't asking for money, wasn't holding up a sign. She was simply holding tightly to a weak-looking dog, both of them wrapped in what appeared to be an old army surplus sleeping bag. André slowed his pace. On that same street, Marcus had called Skylar trash 3 times that day. Other business owners acted as if she didn't exist. Some pedestrians literally stepped over Bear's outstretched paws without apologizing. And a local TikTok influencer named Kendricks had even discreetly filmed them earlier, making jokes about the scene for his followers. "Homeless with a dog, so Seattle," he had captioned it with laughing emojis. Skylar didn't react. She just sat there, waiting, maybe for food, maybe for luck, maybe for nothing at all. André observed for several seconds, then slowly approached. He said nothing at first. He simply sat down on the cold concrete beside her. Bear lifted his head. Skylar looked at him suspiciously, her green eyes sharp with wariness, learned from too many broken promises. No one understood it. No one expected it. But in that moment, a story began, and it would not be forgotten anytime soon. The air was thick with moisture rolling in from Puget Sound. The scent of fresh coffee from Marcus's shop, mixed with diesel fumes from city buses and the salt tang of the nearby waterfront. The city was settling into evening mode, with streetlights flickering on one by one along the historic streets. André felt the weight of the day pressing on his shoulders. The hospital visit had shaken him more than he'd expected. His friend Phoenix, once a vibrant cellist who could make audiences weep with his solos, now lay connected to machines, his breathing shallow but steady. The doctors had spoken in terms of months, maybe a year. It had reminded André of how fragile everything truly was. He had wanted to walk through the city to clear his head, to chase away heavy thoughts with the familiar rhythm of his birthplace's streets. But instead of finding comfort in the known pathways, he had become witness to something that affected him more deeply than he had anticipated. Skylar sat there like an invisible sculpture, a piece of street furniture that everyone had learned to ignore. Her clothes were inadequate for the season, her auburn hair tangled and dull from weeks without proper washing, but it was her eyes that struck André, eyes that were far too old for such a young face. Bear, who would turn out to be her constant companion for the past 8 months, was as thin as his owner. His ribs showed clearly beneath a coat that must have once been lustrous black and tan. But in his eyes was the same loyalty André recognized from his own pets at home, that unconditional love that animals seem to possess regardless of circumstances. Marcus stood in his doorway, arms crossed, watching with furrowed brows. He had viewed Skylar and Bear as a problem from the moment they had appeared. Customers complained, he claimed. The dog smelled, he insisted. But really, it was just uncomfortable, this reminder of society's failures, right in front of his trendy coffee shop. Delilah, the elderly street musician, was just packing up her violin case further down the block. She had seen Skylar earlier that day and had even considered doing something, but doubt had held her back. What could an old woman with a violin do against such an overwhelming problem? Kendrick scrolled through his phone, checking his latest video stats. He had gotten over 800 likes on his post about the homeless girl. His followers found it funny, ironic, a little dark but not too heavy. He felt justified, as if documenting reality absolved him of any responsibility to actually help. But when André sat down beside Skylar, something shifted in the atmosphere of the street. It was a small gesture, but in its simplicity lay a power that touched everyone who witnessed it. A famous man, someone who had filled concert halls and presidential venues with his music, was sitting on the cold, damp sidewalk beside a child that the world had forgotten. The question that hung in the air, unspoken but palpable, was simple. Why? And what would happen next? The concrete was ice cold. André felt the moisture seeping through his expensive wool pants as he settled beside Skylar. She glanced at him quickly, as if expecting another scolding. But he said nothing. He simply looked at Bear, who returned his gaze with deep, hungry eyes that held more dignity than most humans possessed. Skylar pulled Bear closer to her, defensive. Her fingers were dirty, nails bitten down to the quick, but the gesture was resolute. A silent warning. Don't come closer. André respected that. He kept his hands folded on his knees. A couple walked by and stared oddly. Nobody recognized the man in the fedora and dark coat. Not yet. Does he have a name? André asked, without taking his eyes off the dog. Skylar hesitated, then answered, her voice raspy from disuse. Bear. André smiled slightly. It was a strong name for such a gentle creature. And there on that sidewalk, strength was exactly what was needed. He looks intelligent, André said. Silence. Skylar bit her lip. Bear's tail thumped weakly against the concrete. For the first time in hours, someone was talking to her instead of about her. Are you cold? She didn't answer, just shrugged. The sleeping bag she was using barely covered her feet. One of her sneakers had a hole worn through the side, and her toes were visible through a gap in her sock. At the coffee shop, Marcus observed from his doorway, arms still crossed. Kendricks noticed the interaction and turned his camera back on. Check this out. Some old guy just sat down with her. He muttered into his phone, barely suppressing a laugh. Maybe he's crazy too. Skylar looked at André as if trying to understand what he wanted. Nobody ever just sat down. Nobody ever asked her dog's name. People only told her to move along. I'm hungry, she said suddenly, quietly, without looking at him. André nodded calmly. I've been hungry before too. Would you like to eat now? She hesitated again. But he needs to eat too. She pointed to Bear. André stood slowly, extended his hand. Come with me. She looked at the hand, then at his face. She still didn't recognize him, but there was something there that made her want to trust. She stood up, pulled the sleeping bag with her, and Bear jumped to his feet. The growing crowd began to notice. Marcus shook his head disapprovingly. Kendricks filmed from a distance, but André didn't care. He led them both to a small sandwich shop on the corner, ordered 2 turkey clubs and 2 portions of grilled chicken, one for her, one for Bear. They sat outside at a small table. She ate slowly, deliberately. Bear devoured everything within minutes. How long have you been on the streets? André asked gently. 14 months. Alone? She nodded. André remained quiet. He knew that pushing wouldn't help. He preferred to listen on her timeline. Skylar swallowed a piece of sandwich and asked, "Why are you helping me?" André smiled softly. "Because nobody else stopped today. Just me. And that says everything we need to know." She looked at him differently this time, studying his face. She was beginning to see him as more than just another adult. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't sending her away. He was listening. And sometimes listening is more than enough to begin a transformation. As they ate, more people slowly began to gather. Some recognized André now. A tourist whispered to her companion, "Is that André Rieu'S?" But he completely ignored the attention, his focus remaining entirely on Skylar and Bear. The sandwich shop owner came outside with a glass of water and set it down in front of Skylar without a word. It was a small gesture, but André nodded gratefully. Sometimes one act of kindness inspired others to do the same. Marcus now stood in his doorway, arms still crossed, but his expression had changed. There was something like confusion, perhaps even shame, in the way he watched the scene unfold. Kendricks had stopped filming. He just stood there, phone at his side, looking at something he didn't quite understand. But that made him deeply uncomfortable. For the first time that day, he felt genuinely guilty about the video he had posted. Skylar wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "Nobody has ever..." She stopped, uncertain how to finish the sentence. "Nobody has ever what?" André encouraged. "Nobody has ever asked me what I wanted. They just tell me what I have to do. Get lost. Don't stay here, you're a problem." André felt his chest tighten at her words. This child, who had so little, had been told so often that she was worthless. "You're not a problem," he said quietly. "You're a person. And every person deserves respect and kindness." Bear, now with a full belly, laid his head on Skylar's lap. She stroked him automatically, her fingers moving through his rough coat. It was clear that this dog was her only constant, her only source of unconditional love in a world that had rejected her. An older woman approached cautiously, carrying a violin case. It was Delilah. She had recognized André and felt compelled to do something, to be part of whatever was happening here. "Mr. Rieu'S," she said softly, may I play something?" André looked at Skylar. "What do you think? Would you like to hear some music?" Skylar shrugged, but there was a spark of interest in her eyes. Delilah began to play, a gentle melody that floated through the street. It was an old American folk song, something that had been passed down through generations. The music changed the atmosphere entirely. People stopped walking to listen. The tension that had hung in the air began to dissolve, replaced by something softer, more hopeful. André watched Skylar and saw a transformation beginning. Her shoulders relaxed, her face softened. For a moment, she wasn't the homeless girl everyone ignored. She was simply a teenager listening to music. And in that moment, André understood why he had stopped, why he hadn't kept walking like everyone else. Because in every human interaction lay the possibility for connection, for understanding, for change. The question now was, what would he do with this connection? How would this story unfold? And what would it mean for Skylar, for Bear, and for everyone witnessing this moment? As Skylar finished her sandwich, several people began moving closer. Kendricks continued filming, but now with more focus. Marcus crossed the street and stopped in front of the sandwich shop. "Sir, did you know this girl sits there every day? She drives customers away. I've told her to move along multiple times." André looked up slowly. She was hungry. Now she's eating. "But she keeps coming back with that dog, making everything dirty. It's dangerous and nobody does anything. You don't understand." "No, sir. What I understand is this. You saw her, and you chose to ignore her suffering. Marcus fell silent for a moment. Then he muttered something and walked back to his shop. Skylar observed him from the corner of her eye. He hates me. No, he's afraid of things he doesn't understand. Most people are like that. Kendricks approached, phone in hand. Hey, can I ask? Are you some kind of artist? Have you done something for this girl? This is going to be an amazing video. André responded with the calm of someone who had experienced much. This isn't about a video. This is about humanity. But you know this is going viral, right? If it serves to open eyes, fine. But if it's just for likes, delete it. Kendricks was confused. He put his phone away, uncomfortable. For the first time, someone had turned the mirror around on him. Skylar finished her sandwich, wiped her fingers on the edge of the sleeping bag. Bear was dozing beside her feet. Do you have somewhere to sleep tonight? André asked. She shook her head. Sometimes I stay by the waterfront, but there are rats there, André thought. He had obligations. He had a full life. But in that moment, nothing was more important than this girl and her dog. Delilah came closer with her violin. Mr. Rieu'S? Skylar's eyes widened. Are you the man with the violin? André smiled, finally revealed. Yes, but today I wanted to just be someone who listened. She said nothing. She just lowered her head, but a small smile appeared on her face. People began gathering around them. But the moment wasn't a show. It was about respect. A young woman stepped forward, her eyes red from crying. Mr. Rieu'S, this is beautiful. But what happens after today? When you leave? It was the question everyone was thinking, but nobody dared ask. André looked at Skylar, who was staring at the ground. That, André said slowly, is what we're all responsible for. Not just me. All of us. Marcus, watching from his shop window, felt something shift in his chest. It was uncomfortable, this feeling. Guilt? Shame? He wasn't sure. Delilah began playing softly, a melody that Skylar seemed to recognize. Her eyes lit up. My dad used to sing that song, she whispered. Where is your father now? André asked carefully. Gone. For a long time. And your mother? Skylar shook her head. She didn't want to talk about it. André understood. Some wounds were too fresh, too deep. He would wait until she was ready to share. Another voice rang out. A man in an expensive suit who had come out of a nearby restaurant. This is weird. Why is a famous man sitting on the street with a beggar? The crowd fell silent. André stood slowly and faced the man. Because she has a name, because she has a story, and because the society we claim to value only works if we actually care for each other. The man opened his mouth to respond, but then closed it. He walked away, embarrassed. Skylar looked at André with something new in her eyes. Hope. Do you think people can change? She asked. I think when one person changes, it's a beginning, André answered. But then something unexpected happened. A police officer approached, his face serious. Sir, I've received complaints. This girl can't stay here without supervision, and the dog doesn't have proper vaccinations. The atmosphere changed immediately. The crowd became restless. Kendricks started filming again. André's face hardened. And where exactly should she go? There are shelters, procedures. I'm sorry, but this is the law. Skylar gripped Bear tighter. No, not without him, he comes with me. The officer sighed. I'm sorry, but dogs aren't allowed in most shelters. Then I won't go, Skylar said defiantly. André looked at the girl, then at the officer, then at the crowd watching in silence. This was the moment, this was what it was really about. Give me 24 hours, André said to the officer. I'll find a solution, one that works for her and the dog. Mr. Rieu'S, with all due respect, I can't make exceptions. I'm not asking for an exception. I'm asking for time, to give a child and her only friend a chance. The officer hesitated. The crowd waited. Even Marcus had come out of his shop to see what would happen. 24 hours, the officer finally said, but after that there needs to be a solution. André nodded. I promise. As the officer walked away, André turned to Skylar. We have one day. Let's make the most of it. But in his mind he knew that 24 hours wasn't enough to solve all the problems. It was enough to begin, but not to finish. And so began the race against time. The crowd now clearly recognized André Rieu'S. Tourists began taking pictures. Some asked for selfies, others whispered among themselves. But he ignored everything. He looked only at Skylar, who was now more relaxed, petting Bear, who had curled up at her feet. "Do you miss having a home?" he asked. She hesitated but answered, "I don't remember what it's like anymore." André took off his coat and offered it to her. "It's getting colder. You can use this." She hesitated but accepted it. Delilah began playing a soft melody on her violin. It was "Take Me Home, Country Roads." André looked at her and smiled. It wasn't exactly the moment for music, but maybe it was exactly what was needed. Skylar closed her eyes briefly. Bear sighed loudly. "My dad played a song like this before he left," she said, almost whispering. André asked nothing more. He just listened. Sometimes silence carries more than questions. Kendricks appeared again with his phone but wasn't filming. He just watched. For the first time, without commentary, without jokes, simply observing. "He's really listening to her," he muttered to himself. Marcus, across the street, stood with crossed arms. He didn't understand it. How could someone so famous take the trouble to care? On the other side of the city, videos began circulating. Someone posted, "André Rieu'S sitting on the ground with a street girl. Is this real?" But there, in that moment, the digital world was just noise. The conversation between André and Skylar happened without haste, without urgency. He asked, "Do you believe in new beginnings?" She thought about it. "I only believe that maybe tomorrow I won't be hungry." André nodded. "Then today is a good start." She looked at him, eyes shining, not with emotion but with doubt. Nobody had ever said anything like that. Nobody had ever thought of her as someone with a future. Maybe she was beginning to believe. But then, something happened that nobody expected. A woman in a business suit approached, her face tense. "Mr. Rieu'S, I'm Diana from Child Protective Services. We received a call about this child." The atmosphere changed immediately. Skylar recoiled, holding Bear protectively. "I'm not going anywhere without him," she said, her voice trembling but determined. Diana's face softened. "Nobody is saying you have to leave him behind, but we need to understand your situation. How long have you been on the streets?" Skylar looked at André, seeking support. He nodded encouragingly. 14 months, she whispered. "And your parents?" "Dad left when I was 9. Mom..." She stopped, her voice breaking. André gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to tell everything now." But Skylar shook her head. For the first time, she wanted to tell, wanted someone to know. "Mom had a new boyfriend. He didn't want me around. Said I had to go. So I left." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Kendricks, who always had a comment, stood speechless. Diana knelt down to Skylar's level. "That should never have happened, and we're going to make sure you're safe." "But what about Bear?" Skylar's grip on the dog tightened. "We'll find a solution," André said firmly. "Together." Diana looked at him, surprised by his involvement. "Mr. Rieu'S, this is a serious situation. It requires professional handling. I understand that, but this girl has just found enough trust to share her story. We're not going to betray that by separating her from the only being that loves her." The crowd around them nodded in agreement. Even Marcus had moved closer, his earlier irritation replaced by something else. "Maybe," he began hesitantly, "maybe I can help. My shop. We can donate food, or I have contacts at a shelter that allows pets." Everyone looked at him in surprise. The man who had been so harsh earlier was now offering help. "Why?" Skylar asked directly. Marcus looked at the ground. Because I'm ashamed of how I treated you, of how I looked away." It was a moment of honesty that touched the entire street. André smiled. "That's a beginning." Delilah started playing again, this time a more hopeful tune. People began humming along. What had started as a confrontation was becoming a moment of community. But Diana's face remained serious. "This is beautiful, all of this, but Skylar can't stay on the streets, and we need to take formal steps." "I understand that," André said, "and I want to help with those steps. But let's do it in a way that respects Skylar's dignity." Diana nodded slowly. "All right, but we need to act now." André looked at Skylar. "What do you want?" It was the first time anyone had asked her that question. What did she want? She thought, her hand still on Bear's head. "I want him to be safe, and I want to not be hungry anymore. And..." She stopped, as if it was too much to ask. "And?" André encouraged. "And I want people to see me, not look through me." André felt his throat tighten. "That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to make sure people see you." Kendrick stepped forward, his phone put away. "I want to help. I don't know how. But I want to help." He too had changed. The young man who had earlier made jokes at others' expense now wanted to be part of the solution. The sun was setting and the street was transforming in the evening light. Lights came on in shops and cafes. The day was ending, but something new had begun. André knew that 24 hours wasn't much time, but it was enough to start. Enough to weave a network of care around this child. Enough to show that when people come together, real change is possible. "Let's begin," he said. And they did. The square fell into silence. Delilah continued playing softly, and André seemed to absorb every unspoken word. Skylar now wore his coat like armor. Bear remained sleeping, unaware of the growing movement around them. A local news reporter approached, microphone hidden in her bag. "Mr. Rieu'S, may I ask a question? Are you taking this girl to a shelter? Are you going to help her?" He looked at her seriously. "Have you asked what her name is yet?" Silence. "No," she answered, ashamed. "Then this interview can wait." The crowd, until then eager for a noble answer, began to quiet down. André's gesture wasn't charity. It was recognition, not of fame, but of human worth. He turned to Skylar. "Would you like to come with me to a warm place? You can bring Bear. I have friends who can help with food, shelter. No promises, just possibilities." She looked at him warily. "What if it's a lie? Then you come back here, but at least we'll have tried." She hesitated, but something in his gaze made her stand up. "But only if he comes too." She pointed to Bear. Of course. Around them, phones were filming. Kendricks was no longer posting. He was seeing, feeling. He too was changing. Skylar stood slowly. Marcus crossed the street again. "And what are you going to do now, save the whole city?" André answered calmly. "I didn't come today to save anyone. I came only to listen to who you chose to ignore." Silence. Skylar held the sleeping bag tightly. Bear jumped up beside her. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice hoarse. "You don't need to. Just promise me one thing," André said. "What?" "When you're back on your feet, help someone else who's fallen." She didn't answer, but her look said everything. Diana returned, now with papers in her hands. "I've been in contact with a special shelter that allows pets. They're willing to take Skylar and Bear tonight." Skylar's face lit up, but there was also fear. "And then? What happens after that?" "Then we work on a permanent plan," Diana said. "School, medical care, therapy if needed. And we make sure you and Bear stay together." It sounded too good to be true. Skylar had learned not to trust promises, but something in the way everyone looked at her with respect and care made her believe this might actually be real. Marcus stepped forward, hands in his pockets. "I want to help too. My shop. We can donate meals for her new room. It's not much, but..." "It's enough," André interrupted. "Every gesture counts." Delilah stopped playing and came closer. "I know people in the community. We can set up a network. Make sure Skylar isn't alone." Kendricks nodded. "And I can use my platform to create awareness. The right way this time." It was as if Skylar's situation had become a catalyst for something bigger. People who barely knew each other were coming together around a common goal. But there was still one problem. The police officer from earlier returned, his face concerned. "Mr. Rieu'S, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that the shelter is willing. The bad news is that there are legal procedures. Skylar's mother needs to be contacted." Skylar stiffened. "No, I don't want to see her." "I understand that," the officer said gently. "But according to the law..." "According to the law," André interrupted, "every child has a right to safety. And if contact with her mother threatens that, then we need to explore other options." Diana nodded. "We can apply for emergency placement. It will take time, but it's possible." Skylar looked from face to face, overwhelmed by the sudden support. "Why are you all doing this? You don't even know me." André crouched so he was at eye level. "Because this is what people should do. Take care of each other. And today started with one step, but it grows with every person who chooses to help." The crowd had now grown considerably. People from surrounding streets had come to see what was happening, and what they saw wasn't just a famous man helping a homeless child. They saw a community coming alive. An older man pushed forward. "I'm Robert. I run a restaurant down the street. I want to donate weekly meals for Skylar and others in her situation." A young woman called out, "I'm a teacher. I can provide tutoring for free." One by one, people came forward with offers of help. It was overwhelming and beautiful at the same time. Skylar began to cry, not from sadness, but from something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. André placed his hand on her shoulder. "Do you see? You're not alone. You were never alone. We just weren't looking." Evening was falling completely, and the street was lit by the warm glow of streetlights and shop windows. But the real warmth came from the people who had gathered around Skylar, a human chain of care and compassion. The van that would transport Skylar and Bear arrived 20 minutes later. It was from a local NGO that Delilah had recommended. As they waited, André took a small wallet from his pocket. He discreetly pulled out some bills and handed them to Skylar. "For you and him. Until you get settled." "I didn't ask for money," she said. "I know, that's why I'm offering it." She took it, with respect, like someone who understood the value not of the paper, but of the intention behind it. The people around began to applaud, but André made a discreet gesture with his hand, asking for silence. This wasn't a show. This was real life. Kendricks was now filming with tears in his eyes. No filters, no editing. For the first time, he felt shame about the content he usually created. Skylar got into the van with Bear in her arms. Before closing the door, she looked at André. "I'll remember this." He smiled. "So will I." And the door closed. The van departed. The silence remained. Some people still tried to talk to André, but he just gave a gentle gesture and walked away, slowly walking down the same street he had come from. Later, that video went viral. Headlines appeared. André Rieu'S sits on the ground with Street Girl and moves America. The gesture that silenced a city. It wasn't music. It was humanity. But André gave no interviews. He didn't post anything. He didn't even comment. Because for him, that moment wasn't about visibility, it was about choice. And that day, he chose to see what everyone else ignored. But the story didn't end there. In the days that followed, remarkable things happened in Seattle. Marcus transformed part of his shop into a donation point for homeless people. Kendricks used his platform to create awareness about street children, this time with empathy and respect. Delilah organized weekly music nights where people like Skylar were welcome. Diana worked tirelessly to sort out Skylar's legal situation. It was a complex process, full of bureaucratic obstacles, but she didn't give up. And Skylar, for the first time in over a year, slept in a warm bed with Bear next to her. The shelter where they went wasn't perfect. It was old. The walls had cracks and it smelled like a combination of cleaning supplies and dog shampoo. But it was safe, and for Skylar, that was more than enough. The first night was difficult. She was so used to the sounds of the street, the constant traffic and distant voices, that the silence of the shelter was almost frightening. Bear sensed her restlessness and stayed awake with her, his warm body a comfort in the darkness. The next day, a teacher came, the young woman who had offered to provide tutoring. Her name was Emma, and she had a gentle voice and infinite patience. She started with basic skills, realizing that Skylar had missed over a year of school and had been struggling even before that. But Skylar was intelligent. She absorbed information like a sponge, her hunger for knowledge almost as intense as her physical hunger had been. Emma was amazed at how quickly she progressed. Robert, the restaurant owner, came twice a week with meals, not just for Skylar but for all the children in the shelter. It became a highlight of their week, the days when Robert's delicious stews and fresh bread arrived. André didn't visit again. He had played his role, taken the first step that had inspired others to take their own steps. But he did send cards occasionally, with simple messages like, "Stay strong," and "You are seen." Skylar kept every card in a box under her bed, a tangible reminder that someone cared. Months passed. Skylar grew not just physically, but emotionally. The therapy sessions that Diana had arranged helped her deal with the trauma of her past. It was painful work, opening old wounds, but it was also healing. Bear, well-fed and well-cared for, transformed from a scrawny stray into a shiny, lively dog. He became the shelter's mascot, beloved by all the children and staff. And Kendricks' video, the honest, unedited recording of that day on the street, had reached millions of views. But more importantly, it had started a conversation. People across America, and even internationally, began talking about homelessness, about how they could really help street children instead of ignoring or judging them. Marcus's coffee shop became a symbol of transformation. He put a sign in his window, "Everyone welcome, no judgment, just kindness." and he meant it. His customers noticed the change, and many came specifically because of his new philosophy. Delilah's music nights became a fixture in the community. Every Friday evening, people gathered in a local community center, some to play, others to listen, all to connect. And André, he continued doing what he had always done, making music, touring the world, bringing joy with his violin. But something had changed in him too. Every time he stood on stage before thousands of people, he thought of Skylar and Bear. He thought of the power of a single gesture, how one moment of attention could change lives. A year later, André received a letter. It was from Skylar, written in neat handwriting thanks to Emma's lessons. "Dear Mr. Rieu'S," it began, "I don't know if you remember me, but I'm the girl from the street. Thanks to you, I'm no longer on the street. I'm going to school now, and I've even joined the school orchestra. I play violin just like you. Bear is big and strong, and he's still my best friend. But I have other friends now too, real friends. And I have a dream. I want to become a musician so I can make others feel what you made me feel that day, seen and heard. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for listening. Thank you for seeing me when nobody else did. With love, Skylar." André read the letter 3 times. Then he carefully folded it and put it in his wallet, where he would always carry it, a reminder of why he did what he did, of the real power of music and humanity. That evening, during a concert in Boston, André told the story, not for publicity, not for applause, but because stories need to be shared. He told the audience about a cold December afternoon in Seattle, about a girl and a dog, about a street full of people who weren't looking until one person stopped. Music, he told the thousands of faces looking up at him, isn't just what we play on a stage. It's how we treat each other, how we listen, how we see. That day in Seattle, I didn't play a single note, but I made the most important music of my life, the music of connection, of compassion, of humanity. The audience was silent, moved by his words. And then, spontaneously, someone began to applaud. Not loudly, not theatrically, but softly and reverently. Others followed, until the entire hall was filled with the sound of hands coming together. It wasn't applause for a performance, it was recognition of a shared truth, that we all have the power to stop, to look, to listen, to see what others miss, to make a difference one person at a time. And somewhere in Seattle, in a small apartment that Diana had helped secure, Skylar practiced her violin. The notes weren't perfect yet, her technique still needed work, but she played with her whole heart, with a passion that came from gratitude and hope. Bear lay at her feet, his ears perking up at every note. He didn't understand the music, but he understood love, and that was enough. But the real transformation went far beyond Skylar's individual story. The video of that December day had sparked something unprecedented, a nationwide movement that became known as the Seattle Effect. Schools across the country began implementing programs for homeless youth. Local governments reassessed their policies. Individuals, inspired by what they had witnessed, began making their own small gestures of kindness. The University of Washington even established the Skylar Foundation, a scholarship program specifically for young people who had experienced homelessness. Skylar herself would later become its first recipient, studying music education with the goal of using art to help other vulnerable children. Marcus's coffee shop became a model that was replicated in dozens of cities. The Everyone Welcome movement spread across America, with businesses proudly displaying signs that indicated they were safe spaces for all people, regardless of their circumstances. Kendricks, transformed by his experience, became an advocate for responsible social media use. He developed workshops teaching young influencers how to use their platforms for positive social change, rather than exploitation of vulnerable people. Delilah's music program expanded into a national network of community music centers where professional musicians volunteered their time to teach children who couldn't afford private lessons. Many of these children, like Skylar, discovered talents they never knew they possessed. 5 years after that cold December afternoon, André Rieu'S returned to Seattle for a special concert, but this time he wasn't performing alone. On stage beside him stood Skylar, now 21 years old, confident and radiant. She played a piece she had composed herself titled "The Day Someone Stopped." The audience, which included Marcus, Kendricks, Delilah, Diana, Emma, Robert, and many others whose lives had been touched by that single moment of human connection, gave them a standing ovation that lasted over 10 minutes. But perhaps the most moving moment came when Skylar stepped to the microphone to address the crowd. Bear, now graying around the muzzle but still devoted, sat proudly beside her. 5 years ago, she said, her voice clear and strong, I was invisible. I sat on these streets for over a year, and thousands of people walked by without seeing me. I had given up hope that anyone ever would. But one person stopped. One person saw me not as a problem to be solved or a nuisance to be moved along, but as a human being worthy of dignity and respect. That person taught me something I want to share with all of you tonight. The most powerful thing any of us can do isn't to write a check or make a donation, though those things matter too. The most powerful thing we can do is to really see each other, to stop, to listen, to recognize the humanity in every person we encounter. There are Skylars on every street in every city in America. Young people, old people, families who have fallen through the cracks of our society. They're not statistics, they're not problems. They're people with stories, with dreams, with the same fundamental need for connection and dignity that we all share. So, I challenge each of you to be like Mr. Rieu'S was that day. Don't walk past, don't look away, stop, see, listen. Because you never know, your moment of attention might be the thing that changes everything for someone who has lost hope that anyone cares. This isn't the end of my story, she concluded, her eyes shining with determination. This is just the beginning, because now it's my turn to stop for others the way Mr. Rieu'S stopped for me. The concert that night raised over $2 million for homeless services across the Pacific Northwest. But more importantly, it reminded everyone present of a simple truth, that we all have the power to change the world, one human interaction at a time. As the audience filed out that night, many were already making plans to volunteer at shelters, to support local organizations helping vulnerable populations, to pay attention to the people they might ordinarily overlook. André Rieu'S had hoped to bring joy through his music that evening, but he had accomplished something even more profound. He had reminded an entire city, and through the power of media, the entire world, of our shared responsibility to see and care for one another. The story of André Rieu'S, Skylar, and Bear became more than a viral moment. It became a testament to the power of compassion, proof that a single act of kindness can ripple outward in ways we can never fully comprehend. And it all began with one man who made a simple choice, to stop walking and start caring. In a world that often feels divided and disconnected, their story reminds us that our humanity is always just one gesture of kindness away from being restored. Years later, when people asked André about his greatest musical achievement, he would always give the same answer. The day I sat on a sidewalk in Seattle and truly listened. No instruments needed, just an open heart and the willingness to see. That was André Rieu'S most human moment. Not his most famous, not his most public, but his most meaningful. Because at the end of the day, when all the concerts are over and all the applause has faded, it's the connections we make, the lives we touch, the love we share, that truly matter. And that day in Seattle mattered more than André could ever know.